You clicked on this video because you either make terrible decisions in Apex, or you think you're a decent player, but you're just double checking that I'm not going to cover something that you're missing. Well, good, I will cover as much as I can in a 10-minute video, because decision making is an extensive aspect to any shooter game, but especially one that's centered around abilities and movement. So here are 6 very important tips to help you guys instantly improve from me, an Apex Legends coach. Tip number 1, don't play on autopilot. Now this applies to any skill level in Apex, and playing on autopilot just basically means you're not being mindful game to game. See, it's easy to let your guard down or get distracted on the wrong things during Apex. It even happens to me sometimes, especially when I'm having conversations with my friends while playing. This is generally where the most amount of mistakes can occur. If you don't pay attention to what's going on around you or what your team needs to be doing next, you will probably miss a lot of critical details. This sounds fairly obvious, right? Well, it's one of those things that's easier said than done, because depending on if you're playing with friends or with randoms, distractions will be everywhere. Try to minimize them as best you can once you are in a match. Playing on autopilot can also make us not look critically at our past mistakes game to game. We die in a match and maybe we got unlucky, or maybe we say, it's my teammate's fault or my own fault. But then you just ready up and go into the next match, overlooking any learning lessons from that past experience. I think this can also turn a play session into something unproductive. I try to make sure the players that I coach truly understand what went wrong back there and what they can do for the next time they're in a similar situation. You can do this on your own or discuss it with your teammates if you have some time. Before you just hop into the next match right away, try to quickly discuss what happened back there and what you can do better for next time. Obviously, don't do this every single game. It's just a helpful way to change the course of a session when things aren't going well. Tip number 2, firing range, warming up, aim training, and 1v1ing. These are all important things, and I've talked about some of them in previous videos, but I want to elaborate on some aspects that I've never shared with you all. Now, if you play on mouse and key, aim trainers like Kovacs and AimLab can be extremely beneficial to utilize before you hop into an Apex session. These aim trainers can get your hand-eye coordination going and prepare you for what's to come in your upcoming matches. Now, if you're on controller, we can't really utilize those aim trainers. However, we can just emulate similar drills in the firing range. I recommend doing this regardless of what input you are playing on. I always warm up at 3 different spots: up close, hip fire range, and mid range, and long range. I practice mostly with the guns I look for game to game: R301, Flatline, CAR, R99, and I always make sure to practice with shotguns. I slowly build the gun up in terms of attachments and which tier of attachment. So I never start the drills with like a fully kitted weapon, as that's not how any of your matches will go. You need to comprehend how the guns feel without any of these attachments, and then slowly work your way up to having it kitted. Another important warm-up is practicing 1v1ing your friends. This can be a great way to focus solely on your gunplay and your movement mechanics. There's a lot of different ways to go about this, but usually my friends and I will grab the same armor and weapons, and we use the rocks in the back to 1v1 on. We use no abilities and no ordinances, and just focus on outputting damage and using movement to outplay each other. You can do this in a best of 10 format, or really however you see fit. I think it's a solid way to get some realistic reps in when it comes to straight up gunfights. And this goes without saying, but 1v1ing isn't totally indicative of how most fights will go. It's a very centralized spot. You're using the same guns and armor, and you're very close. The fight's gonna go down. There's no distractions, there's no rotating, there's none of that stuff involved. But take all of that aside, it's the only way to just emulate straight up gunplay and movement mechanics against another real opponent. If you guys are enjoying this video, all I ask in return is that you smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. This helps push the video out to more viewers, and it's free, so thank you for doing so. Tip number 3, try to learn from your teammates and try to play with people who are better than you. Now, this is a 2-part tip, but they're heavily related with one another. So first, you need to try to learn from your teammates, whether it's their mistakes or the good things that you see them do. This doesn't mean trash on your teammates or even say to them what you think they did wrong if they screwed up, especially if they're randoms. We all know solo queuing is rough, but you can still take value away from what went right or wrong during those games. The things I look at are like, did they go in first too far ahead of the rest of us? Or did I do that? Did they not heal and just proceed to fight on low health? Did they not use their abilities correctly or at the right time? Did we play close to one another when we took that fight? I mean, whatever you notice, this could be helpful. The point of it is to not deflect away from your own shortcomings. It's to get a broader sense of general mistakes that occur in Apex. This part obviously applies even if you don't play with randoms and you play with your friends. Now, the second part of the tip is to try to play with people better than you, if you can. This can happen when you hop into a match and you realize one of your randoms has some insane stats or was previously a high rank. You should look to play off of them and stay close to them throughout the match. This will most likely force you to move faster, fight more, and hopefully you guys end up getting a dub. Now, it's not a guarantee, but nothing in Apex ever is. It's definitely worth a try though, and I've seen it work out before. Tip number 4, get the most out of the time that you're putting into Apex. If your goal is to improve in this game while also winning more fights and matches, then you want to start optimizing your time in this game. In a BR match, there can be a lot of downtime, landing, looting, rotating, loading into the game. And if you're on Storm Point, chances are you're traveling light years just to find the next fight. All of this stuff can be beneficial to newer players. However, once that phase is over, you need to start hunting for action. If you're playing pubs, land hot-ish. You want to spend as little time as possible when it comes to getting into the reps that will actually help you familiarize yourself with those high intensity battles. Landing on the edge of the map to find your favorite loadout and a great armor, which takes anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, is not going to cut it. You'll waste a lot of time most matches, and if you do all of that and end up dying to the first team you see, well, you really only got about 30 seconds of practice. Not to mention it's going to feel terrible after. Now that's not great. In some games you'll try your best to avoid this, but it will just happen. But if it's happening every single game, then you're doing something wrong. If you do drop hot and you die a few games in a row, then tone it down a notch. Instead of landing with multiple teams, you can land with one team, or go and land uncontested but be close to a busy drop spot. Quickly get looted up and rotate over to the action. I always talk about how there's so many variables going on in a game of Apex. Different maps, different legends, all sorts of weapons, different armors, on and on and on. This is a huge catalyst as to why I say get into action. There's no possible way to emulate most of these situations, and if you haven't been in them before, you won't know what the heck to do in them. Guys, you have to listen to me here. If you fail to get accustomed to everything that's possible game to game, you will continue to get outplayed by people who know more than you. To end on this point though, some of you will be like, I don't want to drop hot and deal with all of the RNG that comes with that. And look, I don't blame you, but specifically in a pub setting, I've never seen someone improve quickly unless they start fighting more. That's the honest truth. Tip number 5, confidence is paramount. This one applies to all skill levels as well, whether you'd like to admit it or not. This one requires lots of balance though, so listen closely. If you go too far into thinking you're the absolute best and no one can touch you, well, you'll get humbled quickly. But you have to also not get so down on yourself that you think you're the worst player in every lobby that you get into. In a game like Apex, everyone has the potential to kill one another, and sometimes even stupid plays can win. I like to tell players, be cautious yet confident, because I think that truly encompasses how you should act game to game. There's another critical aspect to maintaining confidence in Apex, and it centers around not getting tilted and keeping your cool. Some people are unaffected no matter how many times they die, but I'm guessing if you're this far into this video, most of you either feel bad or angry when you die over and over again. So you got to shake off any negative feelings that you have around what happened last match and learn to start fresh. If you don't do this, you may ruin your whole session that day you're playing. It's got to be obtainable in your mind that things can and will get better. Small steps. You guys got that? It's really simple. It's not easy, but it's simple. Tip number 6, don't overwhelm yourself with too many things at once. This requires you to be diligent with your available playtime, and this is going to look different for everybody. Some people will learn faster, while others may not because they don't have as much time to play. Regardless of what it is, I think Apex has a lot of things to learn, so I recommend you not overwhelm yourself with trying to learn every aspect of all of the legends, weapons, and maps. Try to flatten the learning curve, so to speak. A great example is if you're new to one of the maps and you just have no idea where to drop on it. I would recommend trying to drop at the same 1 to 2 places every game on that map until you get more familiar with where everything is at and how the map flows. I recommend the same premise for Legends, although this one can be a bit more tricky to do depending on who you are. Don't overwhelm yourself with trying to master all 20 plus legends. Trying to do this early on will probably have an opposite effect on your gameplay. And once you realize who some of your favorite legends are, I would try to play up to 3 of them in the beginning. This is better for you overall, and it's a more realistic approach to the game. Now, of course, after you feel like you've got the basics down with this stuff, then you venture out. You land in different areas, you test out other legends, you use the guns you don't feel great with, all of that stuff. You do this all at once, it doesn't go well for most players. All right, so now you know these 6 tips to improve your gameplay. Well, if you're ready to learn more about Ranked this season, I covered everything in this video here. Check it out next. Peace.